In partnership with you, we look forward to passing the 51st consecutive National Defense Authorization Act. I reserve the balance of my time.
The gentleman from California reserves the balance of his time. The gentleman from Washington is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield myself 3 minutes.
The gentleman from Washington is recognized.
Thank you. I want to thank Chairman McKeon, the committee members, and the staff for once again doing an outstanding bipartisan job in putting together this bill. One of the paramount duties of our Congress is to provide for the common defense, and most importantly, make sure that our men and women who serve us in uniform have all the support they need to fulfill the missions that we ask them to do. I believe this bill meets that standard, and I thank the chairman for his willingness to work in a bipartisan fashion with me and my staff. I believe we have upheld the tradition of this committee and shown that Congress can, in fact, work together to get things done, and I always appreciate that opportunity. Most importantly, this bill prioritizes supporting the warfighter. We still have around 70,000 U.S. troops deployed in Afghanistan fighting a war. We need to make sure they have the equipment and support they need to do that. I believe this bill meets that mission. This bill also recognizes the threats we face and adequately funds the needs to meet those threats. Most importantly, the threat from terrorist and non-state actors like al-Qaeda and their affiliates. We have strong support for the Special Operations Command as well as for intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance to make sure that we can continue to defeat the terrorist networks that would threaten us. Those are the top priorities. We also make sure that our troops get the 1.7% pay raise they need and get the support for both the individual troops and for their families that are necessary to continue to serve us. We must always remember that we have an all-volunteer military. We are dependent upon the willingness of people to volunteer. We must make sure that we honor that service. We have done that. We've done it quite well, to the point where we have the finest military the world has ever seen, and the support from this Congress is critical to maintaining that. While there is much in this bill that I think is excellent and that I support, I will note just one caution as we go forward. Our bill is $8 billion over the Budget Control Act. It is over what the Senate is going to mark up. We at some point are going to have to rationalize that and figure out how to make our national security strategy and our defense budget work in an era where our budgets are coming down. We have a sizable deficit, and I believe it's critical that we put together a strategic plan and plan for the future. It's not enough to go year by year. We don't want to wake up 2 or 3 years from now and find out that we funded more programs than we can afford to complete. We need a strategic vision, and we're going to have to work to get to that number and get to that cooperation with the Senate. I also want to emphasize the importance of an amendment that I plan to offer that would change how we handle indefinite detention in military custody. I do not believe the executive branch should have that power to indefinitely detain or place in military custody people captured or arrested here in the U.S. I believe the United States Constitution and our due process system provides plenty of protections. We have arrested and convicted over 400 terrorists using that system. We have not used the indefinite detention and military custody power given to the President, and we have been able to protect ourselves. It's important that we protect the Constitution, and that amendment is ruled in order, and I would hope that the committee would pass it. I would hope that the full House would pass it. But I'm very pleased with the bill. Again, I thank the chairman for his outstanding work, making sure that this bill supports the men and women who so bravely serve us in uniform. I believe it meets that objective, and I appreciate working with Mr. McKeon, all of his staff, and all of the members of the committee. And with that, I reserve the balance of my time.
The gentleman from Washington reserves the balance of his time. The gentleman from California is recognized.
Mr. Chairman, I yield myself such time as I may consume. I just wanted to respond to my good friend, the ranking member, Mr. Smith from Washington. He's correct. We are $8 billion over the amount that was in the Deficit Reduction Act. The President, in his budget submitted to us, was $4 billion over, and we went about $3.7 billion above that. But in the overall budget that we will pass out of the House, that we did pass out of the House under Budget Chairman Ryan, we increased the spending for defense due to the priorities that we feel are most important and the constitutional requirement that we have to provide for the common defense. But we will cut in other areas of the budget so that we comply fully with the Deficit Reduction Act. At this time, Mr. Chairman, I yield 2 minutes to my friend and colleague, the chairman of the Subcommittee of Tactical Air and Land Forces, gentleman from Maryland, Mr. Bartlett.
Gentleman from Maryland is recognized for 2 minutes.
Thank you. I rise in support of H.R. 4310, the National Defense Authorization Act for fiscal year 2013. I have the privilege of serving as the chairman of the Tactical Air and Land Forces Subcommittee. Our jurisdiction includes approximately $65 billion of Department of Defense research, development, and procurement programs within the Army, the Navy, the Marine Corps, and the Air Force. I want to first thank the subcommittee's ranking member, SILVESTRE Reyes from Texas, and an incredible staff for support in the hearing process and in completing the markup of this bill. Under the leadership of Chairman McKeon and Ranking Member Smith, the committee effort is truly bipartisan. The committee focus is to support the men and women of the armed forces and their families, providing them the equipment they need and the support they deserve. Our first priority is providing the equipment to support our military personnel serving in Afghanistan and other areas where they may be under threat of hostile actions. Over $2 billion in the President's budget request is recommended to be authorized to address urgent operational needs for the warfighter, to include counter-improvised explosive device requirements. An additional $500 million is provided for the National Guard and Reserve equipment account. The committee bill sustains the nation's heavy armored production base by maintaining minimum sustained production of upgrade modifications for Abrams tanks, Bradley fighting vehicles, and Hercules recovery vehicles. The Army's budget request would result in a production break of 3 to 4 years for the upgrade of these heavily armored vehicles, which would negatively impact many small businesses. The committee believes maintaining minimum sustained production is a better alternative for taxpayer dollars than closing production lines and then paying to reopen the production lines years later. Minimum sustained production would also retain the valuable workforce and supplier base that would otherwise be lost and provide upgraded vehicles to the Army Heavy Brigade combat team.
Fired.
I strongly urge members of both parties to support this bill. Thank you.
Gentleman yields back. The gentleman from Washington is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield 2 minutes to the gentleman from New Jersey, Mr. Andrews.
The gentleman from New Jersey is recognized for 2 minutes.
I ask unanimous consent to revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection.
I thank our ranking member and my colleagues for their indulgence in letting me go a little out of turn here. By most counts, the United States Department of Defense is the second largest organization in the world, behind only the rest of the United States federal government if you took out the Department of Defense. It is the only organization of that size that doesn't have audited financial statements. So in an organization that spends over $500 billion a year, we cannot say to the taxpayers of our country with certainty exactly what is spent where, by whom, and for what. My friend Congressman Mike Conway from Texas has made correction of this problem a special mission of his since he joined this institution. And I'd like to thank him because he chaired a panel that Chairman McKeon and Ranking Member Smith saw fit to appoint in this Congress to look at how to fix that problem. The solution to the problem, I think, is well on the way to being achieved. Secretary Panetta, Mr. Hale, who's the Comptroller of the Pentagon, have worked diligently on this, made it a very high priority. And the panel on which I was privileged to serve had voluminous hearings to find out the progress that we were making. Suffice it to say that we are impatient, and we should be. But I do believe that the cooperative relationship between the panel created by the chairman and the ranking member and the Department of Defense is leading us to the day when we will have a clear-eyed assessment of exactly what's being spent on what, by whom, and when. There will be an amendment in all probability offered later in this debate which would codify the deadline for reaching some of the milestones along that path. I will respectfully oppose that amendment because I think codification of this requirement will actually retard our progress rather than enhance it. So I look forward to debate about all aspects of this bill. I'm proud to have supported the bill in the full committee markup. I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman yields back. Gentleman from California is recognized.
Mr. Chairman, I yield 2 minutes to my friend and colleague, the Vice Chairman of the Armed Services Committee and Chairman of the Subcommittee on Emerging Threats and Capabilities, the gentleman from Texas, Mr. Thornberry.
Gentleman from Texas is recognized for 2 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I
commend Chairman McKeon for his leadership in developing this bill and throughout the course of the year, and appreciate the working relationship that he and the ranking member have, as evidenced by the fact that this bill was reported out of committee by a vote of 56-5. And I certainly agree with the comments of Mr. Andrews. One of the bipartisan goals of this committee is to make sure the taxpayers get every dollar of value possible for the money we spend for defense. And that is a goal that I think we are making good progress toward. Mr. Chairman, I want to rise to express special appreciation for the members and staff of the Emerging Threats and Capabilities Subcommittee, especially Mr. Langevin, our ranking member. To summarize that portion of the bill, I think one could do it in three parts. One is to support the people and missions of the U.S. Special Operations Command while also providing objective oversight of what they do. Special Operations Forces are at the forefront of protecting this country, but that also puts them at the forefront of a lot of legal and policy issues, and that makes communication between the Congress and the Special Operations Forces and their lawyers and other overseers especially important. Secondly, our portion of the bill tries to sow and nurture the seeds of our future capability, such as our science and technology programs. It's always tempting to cut research and development in tight budget times, but if you do that, then you are handicapping yourself from having the capability you need in the future. And thirdly, this mark tries to take several steps forward on oversight and policy in the critical new domain of warfare of cyber. And obviously we have talked a lot about that in recent weeks on the floor of this House. Finally, Mr. Chairman, I'll just make the point that we have lots of problems around the world, but this bill comes to the floor in a time of war. So as we come with these various amendments that cut this, that, and the other thing, we all need to keep in mind that there are still people out there trying to kill as many Americans as they possibly can, as recent news reports reflect. We ought to be cautious about making... That's fine. That's fine. Thank you.
The gentleman yields back. The gentleman from Washington is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield 2 minutes to the gentleman from Texas, Mr. Reyes, the ranking member on the Air-Land Subcommittee.
The gentleman from Texas is recognized for 2 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to thank our chairman from California and the ranking member for, again, leading the way in a bipartisan effort. Although probably not a perfect bill, but under the circumstances with troops still deployed in war zones, I think a bipartisan agreement to this very important and critical legislation was reached. I especially wanted to thank my chairman, Chairman Bartlett, for working and continuing the tradition of working on a bipartisan basis. I am pleased that our portion of H.R. 4310, it supports, I believe, all the high priority acquisition programs in the President's budget. Some examples: it fully funds the Army's Ground Combat Vehicle program at about $640 million, provides $5.8 billion for Army helicopters, UAVs, and other aviation platforms and upgrades. It also provides $1.6 billion for 21 V-22 Ospreys, which are a critical component of supporting our troops and their operations in Afghanistan today. It further provides $2.2 billion for upgrading the Army's tactical communications network. It increases funding for the Abrams tanks by $181 million. It also increases funding for Bradley fighting vehicles by $140 million. And it, more than anything, it protects our industrial base at this pivotal and critical time to ensure that we don't lose the expertise and the quality workforce that we have in this country and all their capabilities. But I guess the most important legislative provision in H.R. 43 is legislation requiring the Air Force to continue to operate the Global Hawk Block 30 unmanned aerial system, which has just reached operational capability in August of 2011. This is important because testimony before our committee underscores what we have known all along in the 4 years that I was chairman of the Intelligence Committee, is that we have to continue to emphasize ISR capability. So this legislation, H.R. 4310, holds the Air Force to its plan from last year to continue to operate both the Global Hawk and U-2 systems through 2014.
Gentleman's time has expired.
So I ask all members to support this critical piece of legislation, and I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Gentleman from California is recognized.
Mr. Chairman, I yield 2 minutes to my friend and colleague, the Chairman of the Subcommittee on Readiness, the gentleman from Virginia, Mr. Forbes.
Gentleman from Virginia is recognized for 2 minutes.
I thank the Chairman for yielding and for his leadership for the national defense of our country. I rise in support of the fiscal year 2013 National Defense Authorization Act. And as you've heard, Mr. Chairman, this year's bill reflects a bipartisan effort to address the many issues impacting the readiness of our military. This year's bill prohibits funding from being used to plan for another round of BRAC, which I believe would be founded on a flawed premise that assumes the administration's proposal for a reduced force structure is correct. I categorically refuse to accept a diminished Department of Defense and believe that additional force structure is necessary to support our combatant commanders. We've also done our best to craft a bipartisan way forward on depot maintenance reform, returning the nation to a long-standing balance between the public and private sectors. Although I'll admit this bill is not all things to all people, we look forward to continuing to improve these portions of the bill in conference. This bill also takes several steps to ensure our Navy readiness, including the restoration of funding to retain 3 Ticonderoga-class guided missile cruisers that the Navy proposed to retire well before the end of their expected service life. Finally, in this year's bill, we address the administration's efforts to reduce military and civilian workforce while increasing its contractor full-time equivalents. By building upon last year's effort to direct the DoD to create a policy for total force management, we direct GAO in this year's bill to provide their assessment of what measures DoD is taking to appropriately balance its current and future workforce structure against its requirements. In conclusion, Mr. Chairman, I want to thank the members of the Armed Services Committee, especially my Readiness Subcommittee ranking member, Ms. Bordello, for their help in providing the unyielding support for the men and women who so heavily rely on our efforts, and our staff who works tirelessly to produce this product. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I yield back.
Gentleman from Virginia yields back. The gentleman from Washington is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield 2 minutes to the gentlelady from California, Ms. Sanchez, ranking member in the Strategic Forces Subcommittee.
The gentlelady from California is recognized for 2 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to our ranking member for the time. And I want to also thank Mr. Turner, our chairman on the Strategic Forces Subcommittee, for his leadership, and for all of the members who work on the Strategic Forces Committee for all of their work and contributions to this year's mark. I think that there are a lot of issue areas that we can agree upon, especially in the Strategic Forces Committee, to make our nation more strong and to really look after our nuclear arsenal. I think there are particular provisions that I really like in this bill. For example, the cost-effective and accountability on some of these things. Supporting nuclear nonproliferation, for example, is a very important issue, and I think this bill does a good job on that. Maintaining a safe and secure and reliable nuclear arsenal, I think that's also important. Fully authorizing the environmental cleanup that we have to do related to these activities, that's also included in this bill. Increasing the regional missile defense systems that we have that protect our troops when they're, for example, in Europe, when they're deployed, and also our allies for the short and medium-range missile attacks that might happen. Protecting long-term and cost-effective investments in our military space assets. These are all areas that we have agreed upon. However, I'm extremely concerned of some of the other issue areas where we do not agree. For example, provisions that impede nuclear weapons reductions. I think that's incredibly important to allow the administration to move forward not only with New START treaty, but also to look at other ways in which we can bring down our arsenal if we don't need it. The governance and management reforms that will undermine independent oversight related to health and safety, nuclear safety.
1 minute.
The gentlelady is recognized for additional 1 minute.
I thank my ranking member. These are very important to our people who work in this arena. What is their safety going to be when they're working with nuclear weapons in the complexes that we have? I think that the standards and the management way that the Republicans would like to do are going to probably cause some inconsistent standards in protecting our workers and risk people's lives, quite frankly. Increasing funding for nuclear weapons by more than $400 million over the President's budget request, when our own Pentagon didn't want that. Or increasing funding for the ground-based mid-course defense program by over $350 million, while there are still test failures going out. When we have only had 9 of 17 tests fail on us, then I don't think we should be continuing to invest in the same system. We should look and try to take care and find out what went wrong. Despite the current budgetary restrictions.
Time has expired.
I thank you, and I thank you, Mr. Ranking Member, and I look forward to trying to work these things out in the conference. Thank you.
The gentlelady yields back. The gentleman from California is recognized.
Mr. Chairman, I yield 2.5 minutes to my friend and colleague, the chairman of the Subcommittee on Strategic Forces, the gentleman from Ohio, Mr. Turner.
The gentleman from Ohio is recognized for 2.5 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman McKeon. Mr. Chairman, much of this bill is totally bipartisan. Two important provisions relate to missile defense and our nuclear weapons infrastructure modernization. Let me talk briefly about those two. The first, in this bill, we restore the funding for our national missile defense system, the budget for which the President has repeatedly slashed. This bill also sets up a third missile defense site for the East Coast, adding another layer to homeland defense. The bill fully funds the nuclear modernization program that President Obama promised when he sought ratification of the New START treaty. National security demands members make a choice: fully fund modernization or don't implement New START. Also, a focus on this bill is reform of the National Nuclear Security Administration. If we didn't strike the right balance after several bipartisan sessions and hearing Ms. Sanchez and I convened, we have a long process ahead of us to work to get it right. As the National Academy Strategic Posture Commission and others have found, NNSA is quite simply broken and cannot afford to be left unfixed. I'm absolutely committed to working with the minority of the administration to ensure a more efficient NNSA that has the nuclear deterrent and safety as unchallenged priorities. I look forward to an administration proposal on the subject. I want to thank the gentlelady from California, LORETTA Sanchez, our ranking member, for her support, leadership, and contributions to our process thus far this year. And I want to thank Chairman McKeon for his leadership. Nuclear weapons and missile defense are two very important issues for the safety and security of our nation. Our subcommittee has taken a strong commitment to these, and we look forward to this bill moving forward to the Senate as we try to strengthen both our missile defense capability and our nuclear deterrent. Thank you.
The gentleman from Ohio yields back. The gentleman from Washington is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield 2 minutes to the gentlelady from California, Ms. Davis, ranking member on the Personnel Subcommittee.
The gentlelady from California is recognized for 2 minutes.
I want to thank Chairman McKeon, Ranking Member Smith for their leadership, and Chairman Wilson for making our subcommittee work a bipartisan effort. I also want to thank the staff for producing this important piece of legislation. I am pleased the bill includes provisions that are important to our men and women in uniform, such as a 1.7% pay raise, improvements and additional efforts to combat sexual assault, transition assistance for members leaving the service, and impact aid funding for our military children. However, I am concerned because the majority on this committee adopted several amendments that distract from the wonderful work that we have done. 2 provisions deal with gays in the military. The first would prohibit same-sex marriage ceremonies from being performed on military installations. Mr. Speaker, we already had this debate, and the American people support gays and lesbians openly serving in our military. Denying a service member the ability to use a military facility to hold a ceremony that others have access to is wrong, and it's discriminatory. But most importantly, that ceremony would not be in violation of DOMA, because DOMA only states that a marriage is between a man and a woman. It literally does not say anything else. But the second provision that was passed in committee is more real troubling to me. This provision would seek to protect the religious beliefs of chaplains and service members. The issue of protecting the religious beliefs of chaplains was already addressed last year, and the law on this is very clear. A military chaplain who, as a matter of conscience or a moral principle, does not wish to perform a marriage may not be required to do so. So this really comes down to protecting the discriminatory acts against gays and lesbians in uniform, which is contrary to the military core values of good order and discipline. I hope we can resolve this issue in a way that does not allow discrimination against a group of service members based solely—
Time has expired.
20 seconds.
The gentlelady, an additional 30 seconds.
Gentlelady is recognized for additional 30 seconds.
I hope we can resolve this issue that does not allow discrimination against a group of service members based solely on their sexual orientation. And the other issue I want to raise, and several of my colleagues have raised this already, is the fact that this bill is $8 billion over the Budget Control Act. While we made a number of decisions to restore cuts from the President's budgets, we will need to resolve this difference at some point. And that means that programs will need to be cut. My hope is that the pay and benefits of our brave men and women will not be the bill payer when we must reduce spending in this bill. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
The gentlelady yields back. The gentleman from California is recognized.
Mr. Chairman, I yield 2 minutes to my friend and colleague, the chairman of the subcommittee on oversight and investigations, the gentleman from Virginia, Mr. Whitman.
The gentleman from Virginia is recognized for 2 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to thank Chairman McKeon and Ranking Member Smith for their leadership in moving H.R. 4310, the fiscal year 2013 National Defense Authorization Act, as it overwhelmingly passed the House Armed Services Committee. The provisions of this bill aptly demonstrate our collective commitment to our nation's heroes, the men and women of our armed services who sacrifice so much each and every day for all of us. I've seen their efforts firsthand, having the opportunity to travel 5 times to Afghanistan, and I recently had the opportunity to visit wounded warriors at Bethesda and Balboa. Each visit reinforces how much this nation owes the members of our all-volunteer force. Against this backdrop, I've worked to ensure the decisions made in Congress fulfill the appropriate oversight role in taking care of our troops and veterans and securing our nation's defense. The bill before us today lives up to those solemn commitments. In particular, this bill blocks the proposed increase in TRICARE fees proposed by the administration. The administration's proposal places an unconscionable burden on the oldest and most vulnerable veterans by increasing their fees by 345% over a 10-year period. The bill recognizes our budgetary limits, but also keeps faith with America's veterans and service members. This bill ensures that as we consider transition in Afghanistan, we adequately understand associated risk. Based on the Oversight and Investigation Subcommittee findings, this bill calls for periodic assessments of the factors resulting in such trends and the effectiveness of transfer agreements we've negotiated with foreign countries. This bill, through an amendment, also requires an assessment focused on similar trends for the Parwan detention facility in Afghanistan. Finally, this bill helps to preserve our nation's maritime dominance by authorizing new construction of up to 10 destroyers and up to 10 submarines, as well as preventing early retirement of 3 cruisers.
Gentleman's time has expired.
With that, Mr. Chairman, I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman yields back. The gentleman from Washington is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Could you give us an update on the time left for each side?
The gentleman from Washington has 17 minutes. And the gentleman from California has 14.5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield 2 minutes to the gentleman from Rhode Island, Mr. Langeman, who is the ranking member on the Emerging Threat Subcommittee.
The gentleman from Rhode Island is recognized for 2 minutes.
As unanimous consent to revise and extend.
Without objection.
I thank the gentleman for yielding, and I'd like to thank Chairman McKeon and Ranking Member Smith and Chairman Thornberry and the members of the committee, as well as the staff, for their efforts in crafting this year's bipartisan National Defense Authorization Act, which affirms our commitment to the dedicated men and women of our military, the infrastructure that enables their efforts, and the research and development required to maintain our technological edge. I'm particularly pleased that H.R. 4130 includes provisions I advocated to prevent the proposed cut in production of the peerless Virginia-class submarines. These boats, which are critical to our national security and built in my district, Quonset-Davisville, by electric boat, the hard-working men and women that work there, are being built ahead of schedule and under budget, and this bill preserves the 2-boat per year model that has enabled such great efficiencies. I'd also like to note the inclusion of my amendment to accelerate the deployment of the most promising directed energy initiatives. Just recently, the Center for Strategic and Budgetary Assessments issued a report that clearly showed that many directed energy technologies have matured to the point that cultural factors and the lack of resources, not technological maturity, are the most significant barriers to operational deployment. These technologies have the potential to fundamentally shift how our military operates in the complex environments of the future and enable DoD's objectives of a smaller, lighter, more agile, flexible, joint force that can conduct a full range of military activities. Additionally, this legislation prioritizes and supports the Department's cybersecurity and IT efforts. Cyber has long been a chief focus of mine, and while I am encouraged that this legislation continues to address this critical issue, much remains to be done. The FBI Director Mueller has said that cybersecurity could soon be more of a threat than terrorism, yet our federal government still lacks a single point of accountability for cybersecurity, and our critical infrastructure lacks many basic protections. I'm hopeful that the Rules Committee will allow for consideration of two amendments I offered that would enable a comprehensive approach to cybersecurity across the government and secure the infrastructure on which our military and our nation depend. On balance, this is a good bill, and I thank the Chairman and the Ranking Member for their hard work, as well as the staff, and I thank you again, and I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Gentleman from California is recognized.
Mr. Chairman, I yield 2 minutes to my friend and colleague, member of the Armed Services Committee, the gentleman from Illinois, Mr. Schilling.
The gentleman from Illinois is recognized for 2 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to thank Chairman Buck McKeon for his hard work and dedication to getting this put together, and then all of the staff members. I rise today in support of the National Defense Authorization Act for fiscal year 2013. This bill shows our support for our troops and allows them to continue their mission in defending our country. We are facing difficult fiscal choices, but we must not penalize our brave men and women who are in harm's way. I'm particularly supportive of how this bill supports small businesses that contract with the Department of Defense. Our organic base that ensures our soldiers are equipped and ensures that those who would do harm to our nation are not allowed within its borders. I'm also pleased that it will provide insight on how TRICARE can be better suited to the needs of the children of our warfighters, and that it will provide more flexibility for the DoD to bring our soldiers who are missing in action home from previous conflicts. I am privileged to represent the Rock Island Arsenal in the Illinois 17th District. These hard-working men and women support our warfighters with the tools they need to accomplish their goals and missions. I look forward to continuing my work on the House Armed Services Committee with my colleagues to ensure that our organic base is ready and able to respond when our warfighters need them. I urge all of my colleagues to join me in support of this important bill and pass it for the 51st year in a row. Thank you, and I yield back my time.
Gentleman yields back his time. The gentleman from Washington is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I, at this point, yield 2 minutes to the gentleman from Washington, Mr. Larson.
The gentleman from Washington is recognized for 2 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise this evening to highlight the Defense Business Panel's work over the past 6 months and discuss our proposals for a series of procurement, contracting, and export control reforms that seek to help small and medium-sized businesses access the nearly $400 billion a year defense market. Burdensome regulations and arcane auditing requirements are driving many companies to quit the defense market and are deterring new suppliers from entering the market. I am pleased that many of the bipartisan recommendations from the Defense Panel's report, challenges to doing business with the Department of Defense, have made it into this year's National Defense Authorization Act and have received overwhelming support from past committee members. To ensure the Pentagon uses small businesses more, the FY13 NDAA requires the Department to award 25% of the total value of all prime contracts each year to small businesses. The panel heard from many companies around the nation about how to modernize our export control regime. Tomorrow we may be debating an amendment that would grant the administration authority to remove commercial satellites and components from the munitions list to the Commerce Control List. I would strongly urge my colleagues to support this amendment. The panel focused on steps that can be taken to commercialize innovative products that originate from small businesses. And this year's NDAA will restore 1% funding for expenses for the Commercialization Readiness Program and will require program offices to import SBIR Phase 2 programs into programs of record when appropriate. We accomplished much to help small businesses over the panel's 6 months of work, but we've only scratched the surface. More can be done to help small businesses contract with the DoD, and I look forward to working with my colleagues to implement these changes. Finally, I want to thank the gentleman from Pennsylvania, Mr. Schuster, who is the chairman of this panel, for his leadership, and the chairman of the full committee and ranking member, Mr. McKeon and Mr. Smith, for appointing the panel. And with that, I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. The gentleman from California is recognized.
Mr. Chairman, I yield 2 minutes to my friend and colleague, a member of the Armed Services Committee, a man who has led troops in battle, the gentleman from Florida, Mr. West.
Gentleman from Florida is recognized for 2 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Chairman McKeon, and thank you, Ranking Member Smith. I stand today to offer my support for H.R. 4310, Fiscal Year 2013 National Defense Authorization Act. To echo the comments of my colleague from Washington, Mr. Larson, I am very happy to see that the recommendations from the Defense Business Panel will be included in this legislation, because we have to streamline our processes and our contracting opportunities as well for our small businesses. I'm also very happy to know that the End Strength Reduction Act was included in this legislation to make sure that we have the proper procedures in tearing down the reduction of our forces and making sure we periodically go back and reassess our national security objectives to make sure that our end strength of our military meets those objectives. I'm also very pleased to know that we continue to protect the well-earned TRICARE health care benefits for our veterans and for our military retirees, staying away from the tripling of those health care rates. We will continue to index that toward the COLA. We will continue to provide for the proper support of our military families and their children and the programs on our installations. But most importantly, I'm very happy to know that we will continue to resource our soldiers, our sailors, our airmen, and our Marines, because as we are standing here today debating this piece of legislation, someone is out there being a watchman on the wall. Someone is out there about to go on a patrol, and they are trusting and depending upon us to do the right thing through the amendment process of this legislation to ensure that they are given the resources so that they can provide victory and, once again, provide for the common defense of this great nation. We must make sure that our military cannot be seen as a bill payer for fiscal irresponsibility. And the most important thing is, when you look at our track record for predicting the next conflict, it is not a good track record. We must make sure that we do not destroy our military and decimate its capabilities and capacities while we're trying to rectify the fiscal situation here. Let's stay focused on our primary responsibility of providing for the common defense. And thank you, and I yield back the balance of my time.
The gentleman's time has expired. The gentleman from Washington is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I now yield 2 minutes to the gentleman from North Carolina, Mr. McIntyre, ranking member on the Sea Power Subcommittee.
The gentleman from North Carolina is recognized for 2 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As the ranking member of the Sea Power and Projection Forces Subcommittee, I want to thank Chairman Aiken for his hard work in helping our subcommittee put together our portion of the FY13 National Defense Authorization Act. Throughout the process, there was a strong bipartisan effort to deliver what is truly needed by our men and women in uniform. There are a number of provisions with which I'm particularly pleased. The multi-year procurement authority for up to 10 Virginia-class attack submarines. This provision also gives incremental funding authority and restores advanced procurement in FY13 that will allow the Navy to procure a second Virginia-class submarine in FY14. Also, the multi-year procurement authority for up to 10 DDG-51 Arleigh Burke-class destroyers, and the extension of the Ford-class aircraft carrier incremental funding from 5 years to 6 years. The bill also contains several littoral combat ship provisions. These provisions simply ask the Navy to update the subcommittee on the program status and ask the GAO to analyze the program and ensure that any issues that previously have occurred will have been addressed and corrected. I want to thank our committee for its hard work, Chairman McKeon and Ranking Member Smith, for their excellent work and leadership. I also want to thank the HASS staff, Tom McKenzie, Heath Bope, and Phil McNaughton, and Emily Waterlander, and the personal staff of Justin Johnson, Blair Milligan, and Caitlin Helms for their efforts and expertise throughout this authorization process. This is a bill we could and ought to support and stand up for our men and women in uniform. I urge all my colleagues to vote yes. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
The gentleman yields back. The gentleman from California.
Mr. Chairman, I yield 2 minutes to my friend and colleague, the chairman of the Subcommittee on Military Personnel, the gentleman from South Carolina, Mr. Wilson.
The gentleman from South Carolina is recognized for 2 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for your leadership on behalf of military families, service members, and veterans to our country. The military personnel titles of the fiscal year 2013 National Defense Authorization Act are a product of an open, bipartisan process. These personnel titles provide our warfighters, veterans, and military families the care and support they deserve. additionally ensuring that proposed drawdown plans do not cut to the heart of the Army and Marine Corps. Specifically, this year's proposal will first authorize a troop pay increase of 1.7% and extend bonuses and special pay. Additionally, limit the in-strength reduction for the active Army and Marine Corps. Also provide significant new regulations for combating sexual assault within the military and extend access to family housing and commissary and exchange benefits for troops who are involuntarily separated. Additionally, we will extend some TRICARE benefits to members of the selected reserve who are involuntarily separated. And finally, make clear that the non-military contributions to health care benefits through a career of service represent prepayment of health care premiums in retirement. In conclusion, I want to thank Ranking Member Congresswoman Susan Davis and her staff for her contributions in this process. We are joined, of course, by dedicated members of the subcommittee. Their recommendations are clearly reflected in this mark. And finally, I want to appreciate the service and dedication of the subcommittee majority staff, John Chaplett, Deborah Wada, Jeanette James, Mike Higgins, Craig Green, and Jim Weiss, along with my military legislative assistant, Chad Sidnor, and military fellow Marine Master Gunnery Sergeant Michelle King. I urge my colleagues to support H.R. 4310. I yield back the time.
Gentleman yields back. The gentleman from Washington.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I now yield 2 minutes to the gentlelady from Guam, Ms. Bordallo, the ranking member of the Readiness Subcommittee.
The gentlelady from Guam is recognized for 2 minutes.
Mr. Speaker, I rise in support of the Defense Authorization Bill for FY13. The underlying legislation continues to make sure that our men and women in uniform are provided with the resources to be well-trained and equipped. Although the war in Iraq is over and we begin a drawdown of the surge forces in Afghanistan, we continue to face challenges with our readiness. The bill supports the Department's reset efforts, which are important to addressing readiness challenges in our global commands, particularly in the U.S. Pacific Command. The bill provides authorization for more than $11 billion in funding for military construction projects, including family housing. And our bill does not authorize an unwarranted round of base closures and realignments. The bill also continues this committee's support for the realignment of military forces in the Pacific, including the military buildup on Guam. As we refocus on the Asia-Pacific region, our bill makes efforts to remove restrictions that are impeding the DoD's ability to move forward with the realignment. The revised agreement between the United States and Japan is a step in the right direction, and our bill helps move that effort forward. I'm greatly concerned by amendments that were adopted at full committee markup that roll back efforts by DoD to invest in biofuels. This investment is needed for our long-term security needs, both operationally at military installations across the world. The cost of traditional fuels has skyrocketed, and those increased costs are eating away at readiness requirements. We need to make the investment in alternative fuels now in order to free the Department from the shackle of foreign fossil fuels in the future. I strongly support the bill's prohibition on the retirement of the Global Hawk aircraft. The Global Hawk is a critical ISR asset, and the Air Force rationale for wanting to retire this aircraft and continue flying on aging aircraft for the foreseeable future was lacking. As we refocus to the Asia-Pacific region, commanders in the AOR need more ISR assets, not less. And I'm glad to keep the Global Hawk Block 30 aircraft flying.
Pardon?
I wish to thank, before I close, Mr. Chairman, it's been a strong partnership of working with my chairman.
I yield the gentlelady an additional 30 seconds.
Thank you very much. Again, Mr. Chairman, along these lines, I believe the bill takes important steps to protect the Air National Guard from unwarranted cuts in mission realignments. I appreciate that the bill does not increase most TRICARE fees and co-pays and prohibits the Department from implementing new fees. I want to thank Chairman Forbes for his strong partnership on the Readiness Committee, and also to thank members of the staff. And again, I support the bill and urge my colleagues to support the measure as well. And I yield back.
Gentlelady yields back. The gentleman from California.
Mr. Chairman, I yield 2 minutes to my friend and colleague, the gentleman from Louisiana, Mr. Landry.
The gentleman from Louisiana is recognized for 2 minutes.
Mr. Chairman, thank you, and I would like to thank Chairman McKeon for working so diligently with me to protect the civil liberties that we enjoy so much in this country. As we debate the protection of these civil liberties in this bill, we need to ask ourselves, what are we trying to provide? We must protect every citizen's basic due process rights. And what are those basic due process rights? Specifically, it would be the right to notice, the opportunity to be heard, the right to a neutral forum, the right to counsel when before the court, the right to an appeal. Some of my colleagues are proposing the creation of additional rights. Doing so does not further protect us under the Constitution, or does it further the protection of our constituents. They say we must allow foreign terrorists captured domestically to be tried in criminal court, enveloping with all of the protections granted to civil criminals. It gives them access to our national security intelligence that ordinary Americans currently are denied. We incentivize them to come to America. The base text of the bill makes it clear and precise that anyone detained is afforded access to the basic rights of due process I mentioned earlier. Therefore, those basic rights are now enshrined. I urge members to support the underlying bill, accompanied by the Gomer-Landry-Ridgewell Amendment, and oppose any other attempts to create additional rights for foreign terrorists. I yield back the balance.
And yields back. Gentleman from Washington.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield myself 1 minute. There are no additional rights contained in this amendment. We have the rights that are in the Constitution that are the due process. The gentleman's comment that additional rights are being granted by this is patently false. The Constitution is clear. It provides all persons in the United States the same rights. All we're doing is we're going back to the Constitution and repealing the authority of the President to circumvent those rights and reduce them. That's a very critical point that we'll talk further about tomorrow. I'm now pleased to yield 2 minutes to the gentleman from Ohio, Mr. Kucinich.
The gentleman from Ohio is recognized for 2 minutes.
I thank the gentleman. I ask unanimous consent to revise and extend.
Without objection.
Yesterday we debated H.Res. 568, which draws a red line for military action at Iran achieving a nuclear weapons, quote, capability, unquote, a nebulous and undefined term that could include a civilian nuclear program. And as a result, the language in that bill makes a negotiated solution impossible. Now this bill, 4310, the National Defense Authorization Act, in Section 1221, makes military action against Iran a U.S. policy. It says right in the bill, it talks about deployments, military action. If you go to create a plan, and under Section B, Article B of Section 1222, it says this, that the Secretary of Defense shall prepare a plan for the Fifth Fleet to conduct military deployments. It says that in Section A of Article 2, it says that there should be pre-positioning sufficient supplies of aircraft, munitions, bombs, fuel, and other materials for both air and sea-based missions against Iran. In Section B, so that sets the stage for a war, and Section B calls for an execution of the war, bolstering United States capabilities to launch a sustained sea and air campaign against a range of Iranian nuclear and military targets. Now, they're not threatening us. We're threatening them with this. And then we call for a showdown in the Strait of Hormuz in Section C. Now, look, we've been through this before. I led this Congress in October of 2002 to challenge the Bush administration's march towards war against Iraq. And that proved that it was wrong to do that. There were no weapons of mass destruction. This is Iraq all over again. And we should at least have a separate debate on whether or not we should be recommending an attack on Iran without including it in this bill. Thank you very much.
Time has expired. The gentleman from California is recognized.
Mr. Chairman, I yield 2 minutes to my friend and colleague, the gentleman from Texas, Mr. Carter.
The gentleman from Texas is recognized for 2 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Speaker, I rise in support of Section 552 of H.R. 4310 and, in fact, in favor of the entire National Defense and Authorization Act, but specifically this provision which justly awards the victims of Fort Hood and Arkansas recruiting station shootings with the Purple Heart. Mr. Speaker, I had the distinct honor of representing Fort Hood, Texas. We call it the Great Place. The day after the attack at Fort Hood, I was there, and at that point in time I began working on legislation to award combat status to the victims so they could all receive appropriate benefits that they deserve. The shooting at Fort Hood and in Little Rock killed 14 dead, 44 wounded. These soldiers were at a deployment processing center at Fort Hood and a recruiting station in Arkansas when they were fired upon. Many of them at Fort Hood were getting ready to go to war or returning from war for reassignment to another assignment. In my opinion, the shooters extended the battlefield from Iraq and Afghanistan to Fort Hood and Little Rock in order to claim their targets before they reached their destination in Iraq or Afghanistan. I am pleased to see the victims receive the Purple Heart. We should continue to work towards awarding the victims the combat status and the appropriate additional recognition that they may deserve, including the civilians who were killed. But make no mistake, at Fort Hood they targeted soldiers. Mr. Speaker, in conclusion, I ask my colleagues to support this language, but to continue to work towards combat status for the victims as well. This is a bipartisan issue. I'm very grateful to Chairman King for getting on board on this issue and driving the force, and as are all of our soldiers, and I'm very grateful for the bipartisan consideration this concept had on both sides of the aisle. I support the National Defense Authorization Act. It is good for our country.
Gentleman's time has expired.
Thank you.
The gentleman from Washington.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I now yield 2 minutes. The gentleman from California, Mr. Garamendi.
The gentleman from California is recognized for 2 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. To the ranking member and the chair of the committee, thank you for a long slog of hard work and a production of a bill that has much good in it. Certainly we have to provide for our military. We need a strong, agile, smart, and deadly national defense program. That's certainly in this bill. We also need to provide for our soldiers, for the men and women and those who serve this country, and that's in this bill. The issue of those that have served and have come home remains an issue that we'll probably take up in other legislation. Provisions in the bill also provide for the intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance necessary for us to be both smart, and the bill also provides for us to be agile in air mobility, and those are good things. However, there are many parts of this bill that I find objectionable, and that led to my no vote on this legislation. Let me quickly list those. Certainly, we've already talked about here on the floor the issue of due process. Needs to be addressed. I want to congratulate the ranking member of the committee for his work in developing a very good proposal that deals with the due process issue, that provides that every person in this country has full access to the civil liberties in the Constitution. The Afghanistan war is not taken care of in this bill. In fact, there are provisions in this bill that in all likelihood would increase the number of soldiers in Afghanistan by some 20,000 and leave them there in perpetuity. We cannot do this. We've got to bring this war to an end very, very quickly, and the bill does not go in that direction. In fact, it goes in the opposite direction. We just heard a discussion about Iran, and I'll simply second that portion of the bill as being out of place and incorrect. There are also things in this bill that are a vast waste of money. Missile defense on the East Coast, a missile system that doesn't work to protect us from a non-existent threat. Why would you spend $100 million this year and up to $5 to $7 million in the succeeding 2 years? We ought not do that. Some things are also to be found at home. The Lawrence Livermore labs need to be protected.
Gentleman's time has expired.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. The gentleman from California.
Mr. Chairman, might I inquire as to the time that's remaining?
Thank you. The gentleman from California has 5.5 minutes, and the gentleman from Washington has 4.5 minutes.
Should have asked for 15 seconds.
You have further speakers?
We do not have additional speakers at this point, so I believe I'm prepared to close if you are. Okay.
The gentleman from Washington is recognized.
Thank you. I yield myself the balance of my time. First of all, I want to again thank the chairman and give thank the folks who have worked on this bill. There are, as you can see from the debate, a lot of controversial issues wind up in this bill, issues of enormous importance, from our policy towards countries like Afghanistan and Iran to civil liberties and on. It takes a great deal of work on behalf of the staff and a great deal of commitment to the bipartisan spirit to work through that, have fair debates, have the votes, and carry on, and always remember that underlying it all is making sure that we fund the defense of this country and we fund the troops who are tasked with protecting it. And I think our committee and our staff does an outstanding job of dealing with those challenges. For the balance of my time, I want to talk again about the indefinite detention issue, because the gentleman who spoke a couple of minutes ago, who raised some of the concerns, I think gave us a pretty good preview of what some of the opposition to that amendment is going to be tomorrow, and I just want to counter those arguments. The first notion that additional rights are being granted as a result of this is quite simply absurd. What this says is the due process that's in the Constitution is what you get if you are arrested. What we have done in this body is we have empowered the President to get rid of those rights in certain cases and indefinitely detain people without charge in many instances and without trial. What we are saying is that is an enormous amount of power to grant the executive, and it is not necessary. President Bush has not used that authority, did not use that authority for the last 6 years. Last 5 years he was in the administration. President Obama has not used it, and yet we have protected this country. To give away that basic due process right, if you are arrested, that you have the basic rights in the Constitution, is no small thing, and it is not necessary. But lastly, I want to talk about this argument that somehow this will incentivize terrorists to come to the U.S. I've heard a lot of arguments. That has got to be the dumbest one I have ever heard. First of all, it is sad to say that there are many terrorists affiliated with al-Qaeda who are trying very hard to come here and inflict harm on us right now. That's why we have all kinds of efforts in this bill, in Homeland Security, to stop them. They're not going to become any less incentivized to do that, whether this bill passes or not, sadly. We must deal with that. Second of all, they are certainly not going to want to come here and operate as opposed to operating in some place outside of the U.S. where we don't have as much reach. That argument has nothing to do with this amendment. This is a very straightforward argument I think we should have. Is this a power that the President needs to have to keep us safe? It is not. It is undeniably an enormous amount of power to go outside of the Constitution, to go outside of due process, and empower the executive branch to indefinitely detain somebody without the due process that we've developed over the course of 230 years is an enormous step for this Congress to take. So we have to ask ourselves the question, is it necessary? It clearly is not. We have arrested, prosecuted, stopped countless terrorist attacks over the course of the last 8 years. Over 400 terrorists arrested, convicted, and imprisoned in this country. From Abdul Muttalib, who was the underwear bomber in Detroit in December of 2008. He was stopped, arrested, interrogated, prosecuted, convicted, and sentenced to life in prison. We have a justice system and a law enforcement system in this country that is more than adequate to meet the threat. We do not have to undermine the Constitution to do that. That will be the core of the argument. I'll look forward to those who are opposed to it arguing why that doesn't keep us safe. I think it will be a great debate. I'll urge people to vote for it, but I hope we'll have that public debate on the floor tomorrow. It's an incredibly important issue, no matter which side of it you're on. It's an important issue that is worthy that this full House have a full and robust debate on, and I look forward to doing that tomorrow. With that, again, I recognize all of the important things that are in this bill. I'm confident when we come through the amendment process, we will have a bill worthy of support of this House, and will then urge members to support it so we can fund the defense of this country and fund the brave men and women who serve our country in the armed forces and make sure they have all the support they need to do what we ask them to do in defending this country. And with that, I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman yields back the balance of his time. The gentleman from California is recognized.
Mr. Chairman, I yield myself the balance of my time.
Gentleman is recognized.
You know, Mr. Chairman, there's been a lot of work done on this bill, and I want to thank my ranking member, my partner in this effort, all of those staff who have put in countless hours to get us to this point for the work that they have done. As you can see from the opening debate, we have many things that we agree on and some things that we disagree on, and I feel good about that, because I heard once that if two people agree on everything, one of them is an idiot. And I think that that there will be things that we have honest disagreements on, and we'll have much to talk about tomorrow, and I'm sure we'll have many hours to do that. Mr. Chairman, for the second year there have been misconceptions raised by the ACLU and others relating to last year's provision dealing with the 2001 authorization for use of military force. In 2012, we affirmed that the President is authorized to detain certain belligerents who are part of or substantially supporting Al-Qaeda, the Taliban, or associated forces. This interpretation was not a new creation. It has been used by both the Bush and Obama administrations and has been upheld by our federal courts. The Wall Street Journal editorial board has described the NDAA's affirmation as a modest law. Former Attorneys Generals Meese and Mukasey have noted that, quote, given the continuing threat posed by groups like Al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula, the affirmation was a critical step in reinforcing the military's legal authorities to combat terror, end quote. Importantly, at no point did last year's bill detract from the rights of U.S. citizens. No one could possibly be in favor of the unlawful detention of innocent American citizens. And nothing could be further from the aim of the NDAA, which was to reinforce the protection of American citizens from terrorist attacks. While we felt confident that the NDAA in no way impacted this issue, we took the feedback we received seriously and analyzed the issue. In particular, I worked very closely with my colleague, Chairman Smith of the Judiciary Committee, as well as numerous outside experts and former U.S. government officials. In acknowledgment of the concerns that have been raised, we felt that it was important in this year's bill to explicitly reaffirm that anybody detained in the United States pursuant to the AUMF can challenge the lawfulness of their detention in U.S. federal court. The great writ of habeas corpus is a citizen's most fundamental protection against any unlawful deprivation of liberty. Some want to go further and have this bill prohibit military detention and interrogation of foreign terrorists in the United States. After all the blood and treasure we have spent taking the fight to the enemy to prevent terrorists from coming to the United States, I find this astonishing. Why would we weaken our ability to fight foreign terrorists here at home? Why would we take unlawful options off the table for our national security officials? We must not forget that it is, in fact, foreign terrorist organizations like the Al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula who would like nothing more than to deprive us our life and liberty. We must have all lawful options available to us in order to effectively dismantle and defeat them. My understanding that the Rules Committee is meeting as we speak. There have been, I think, about 240 amendments submitted to be debated on the bill. Last year, I think they approved 150. I don't know how many or what amendments will be approved. We'll find that out as we go through the evening and tomorrow. But I know that we will have a good, healthy debate, and at the end of the day, the important thing that we must remember that this committee's responsibility is to look out for the common defense of this nation. We do so by supporting our troops, those who are on the battlefield, those who are stationed in various places around the world. We must see that they have everything they need to carry out their missions and to return home safely to their loved ones, and that the loved ones that are left behind are given the things that they need, the support that they need to continue to support their loved ones who are out fighting for our freedoms. With that, Mr. Chairman, I look forward to the debate tomorrow. I encourage all the members of our conference and our colleagues in the Congress to support this very important bill to help them carry out that important mission. And I do so and I yield back at this time the balance of my time. Thank you very much.
Gentleman yields back. All time for general debate has expired. Under the roll, the committee rises.